It's the early hours of the morning in Gauteng, South Africa. A cash-in-transit truck has just left its first collection point, just as it turns on the main road towards its second stop. A vehicle suddenly appears from behind and blocks its path. Men with heavy guns come out of the vehicle and demand for the guards to surrender. The truck had just ran into an ambush, and the young cat leading the heist would later become one of the most feared gang lords in Gauteng. Vusi cat Matlala grew up in Jozi, a city known for its fast-paced lifestyle and hustle. He was nicknamed Cat for a reason. The man was known to be not just ruthless but calculated. His early years in the Gauteng underworld were dominated by several cash-in-transit heists and house robberies. Vusi knew operating in these spaces would get him rich, but the risk of meeting his maker was getting higher and higher with each heist. He knew he had to look for another way to make millions without being in the direct line of fire, and everything changed when he linked up with Morgan Matlala, a key player in the government tender business. Morgan was no ordinary player in this space. He was rumored to have political protection reaching the highest office in South Africa. He quietly climbed the ranks in the early 2000s, leveraging connections to secure lucrative government contracts for healthcare supplies. By the 2010s, Matlala was a major player in this space, and he introduced Cat to this scene. Together, they tapped into the goldmine of government tenders, supplying medical products to state institutions. This not only made Cat rich, but it also gave him similar political protection enjoyed by his counterpart. And with this power, the man felt invincible. The two created a blueprint on how they operated. And the lucrative plan went as follows. They first created legitimate shell companies with operational addresses. These shell companies were then used to bid for tenders through the RQS system. This is all legal, but the illegal part comes from how they won these tenders. You see, the request for quotation is a method used by organizations, especially government departments, to ask companies to submit price quotes for specific goods or services. It's part of the broader tender process, which is how governments or businesses select suppliers for contracts. In essence, the RFQ system is like the government shopping around for the best deal, but with strict rules to ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability in public spending. Although this system is designed to be fair, it can be heavily exploited. Cat knew these loopholes, and the man took full advantage of them. He used his wealth to bribe workers inside government departments. These workers then leaked RQS details to his companies before the official release, giving them a head start to prepare a winning bid. In other cases, the RFQ was written with overly specific requirements that only one company could meet, and this meant that other competitors were locked out of the bid. The use of many fake shell companies also meant that these companies would submit fake quotes acting like competitors, and these bids were deliberately higher or incomplete, making their official bid look better. This strategy worked extremely well for Vusi cat Matlala, but things got tricky after the awarding of the Tembisa hospital tender. You see, money had managed to buy the man most government officials and workers, but there was one relentless woman who took notice of the irregularities in the tender business. Mostly the Tembisa project. Babita Diokaren was no ordinary civil servant. Starting as a clerk in the Gauteng Department of Health, she worked her way up over 30 years to become Chief Director of Financial Accounting. The woman was known for her integrity and being excellent with numbers, spotting irregularities that others missed, and she was about to be the first domino towards the end of Cat Matlala. In 2021, as acting Chief Financial Officer, she turned her eye towards Tembisa Hospital, a struggling public facility in Johannesburg's East Rand. What she uncovered in her investigations would rock the nation and put a spotlight on the king of the Gauteng underworld. Babita identified 217 companies doing business with Tembisa Hospital, and she immediately flagged them to be possibly fraudulent. These companies included 20 shell companies existing only on paper with no real operations. The most concerning part was the 60 million rand extracted by these companies in under 6 weeks through suspicious contracts. The plot got deeper and deeper the more she probed further. Between April and June 2021, Tembisa processed 1,203 purchase orders valued between 400,000 and 500,000 rand, nearly triple the amount of Gauteng's 9 largest hospitals combined. Almost all of these payments were just below the 500,000 rand threshold for competitive bidding, and this was a deliberate tactic to avoid stricter tender rules. She then uncovered outrageous overpricing on the products and services provided by these contracted companies. 500,000 rand for 100 leather wingback chairs. This meant that each chair costed 5,000 rand. 40,000 rand for 4 buckets. The buckets were estimated to be less than 600 rand on market price. 2,500 rand for a single pair of forceps. These forceps had a market value of 70 rand. There was even a 500,000 rand skinny jeans purchase, an item irrelevant to hospital needs. She eventually uncovered up to 850 million rand in dodgy payments. She compiled her findings in thousands of emails and a forensic report. She then passed the information to her superiors, including the then CFO of the hospital. But most of these superiors were already compromised by the syndicate, and they quickly informed Vusi Cat Matlala. Bobata was now a big target for one of the most dangerous men in Gauteng. It's now August 23, 2021. Exactly 2 weeks after her findings, Bobata is inside her vehicle just near her home in Johannesburg. A white BMW approaches her vehicle and 4 men jump out of the car with firearms. The woman is shot on the spot and the assassins speed off in the BMW. It was certain her uncovering of the schemes in the government tender business had led to her tragic end. You see, before her death she had managed to freeze up to 70 million rand in pending payments to companies owned by both Cat and his counterpart, but these payments were quickly paid off after her death. It was now certain the kingpins would continue their state capture without anyone standing in their path. The death of Bobata put a spotlight on the Tembisa hospital, and this led to investigations by the Special Investigation Unit. These investigations uncovered almost up to 2.5 billion rand payments in these fraudulent schemes. But even with this evidence, arresting these kingpins was almost impossible, as they had protection from the highest offices with a direct line to the Minister of Police. The kingpin was now operating with highest possible protection in the country, and his next moves would only get bolder and bolder. In the underworld, he also becomes the plug for assassins. Whenever there is a problem, prominent figures just pick up the phone and hit Cat, and the problem disappears. And this is exactly what happens when he receives a call from Jonathan Msibi. Msibi had been clashing with a man nicknamed Joe Ferrari. They are both prominent figures in the taxi industry, and this leads to clashes on policies and how things are run within this space. And in this industry, when there are clashes, they are mostly solved by bullets. It's now August 11th, 2022. Joe Ferrari is traveling with a friend, 21-year-old Sandile Masimula, who is driving his red Ferrari. They park at an estate's parking lot. Just as they are about to exit the vehicle, a white vehicle carrying 4 men armed with assault rifles approach and open fire on Joe and his friend. The high-intensity attack overwhelms the two, but they are saved by a police officer who fires back at the hitmen. The 2 men survive the attempted hit, and this does not go well with Cat Matlala, who has a reputation in the streets as the king of contract killings in Gauteng and the John Wick of the underworld. The man was now out for vengeance, to prove himself. His first target is the gang which dominates the streets of Gauteng, called Boko Haram. He first targets 5 prominent members of the gang before going for their leader named Zorro, and this solidifies his status in the underworld of Josie, taking over the helm of being the Don of the most powerful gang in the province. His vengeance is not targeted at his enemies alone. His own best friend named Alframs is also executed for merely asking for a 2 million rand debt owed to him by Cat. Power had completely consumed the man, and he was stopping at nothing under the sun. Joe Ferrari might have survived the hit inside the parking lot, but Cat Matlala vowed to target anyone associated with his nemesis. And a famous DJ in Johannesburg was about to be targeted for his close association with the enemy. You see, Cat Matlala was also running a private security company called Cat VIP Protection. The leader of DJ Somebody's Security was also employed by this same private security company. And on the morning of the 20th of November 2022, both men are gunned down in a hail of bullets in Johannesburg. The man had the full control of the underworld and the solid protection of powerful politicians within the state. Just a few months after the death of the DJ, Cat Matlala's company Medicare 24 is the sole successful bidder for the SAPS tender worth 360 million rand. Matlala's company is selected despite lacking qualifications and facing fraud allegations from the Tembisa tender. It was now beyond clear the man was being backed by officials in the South African government. Just days before the tender is awarded, a former police minister stays in Matlala's luxury penthouse in Pretoria. A high-ranking SAPS officer on the bid evaluation panel resigns 3 weeks before the tender is awarded and later joins Matlala's company. Another officer is bought a brand-new luxury vehicle by Cat. The man even bankrolls the police minister, funding gala dinners and travels for the head of the police ministry in the country. In return, the political figures would change policies and protect the kingpin. The Minister of Police is even persuaded to disband the political killings task force investigating Cat. But in all this madness, one man watched from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike and light it all on fire. You see, although there were rogue elements in the police ministry, some dedicated officers refused to fall for the decay within the force, and they knew the kingpin would eventually misstep. The man was already believing he was invincible. But one move would lead to the fall of all the remaining dominoes. Vusi Cat Matlala had a romantic relationship with a woman named Cordelia Kabang. He then met Tebogo, who introduced him to another woman known as Tsakani Baloyi. Vusi started to date Baloyi, and this led to resentment between the two former friends. Tebogo, a famous socialite, knew she had to separate herself from these dangerous circles, but her breakup with the most powerful man in the Gauteng underworld was not accepted well by the man who thought he could control everything under the sun. The resentment eventually leads to a hit on the woman. On October 25, 2023, Tebogo narrowly escapes death on the N1 highway near Sandton in Johannesburg. Her vehicle is ambushed by gunmen firing multiple shots at the vehicle. Tebogo is unharmed, but a friend is critically injured and hospitalized for over a month with life-changing injuries. The police quickly connect the dots and arrest the kingpin on attempted murder charges after arresting the assassins who told on the gang lord. The kingpin had sent a WhatsApp message to the hitmen telling them to aim for the face. The police also discovers some crucial evidence for prior cases through this arrest. The same firearm used in the Tebogo shooting was tied to the 2022 Centurion attack on Joe Ferrari and DJ Somebody's murder. The king of the Gauteng underworld was now cornered by the law, but he knew he still had powerful cards to play. His powerful contacts in the government knew the risks of him cooperating. But as much as they worked to try and get the man out, another man was steps ahead of the syndicate. And on the 6th of July, 2025, KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Mkhwanazi would drop a bombshell on the decay and corruption within the police, leading to the suspension of the police minister. The king of the Gauteng underworld was now left to face the full force of the law without powerful political friends to protect the man. All the tenders linked to his companies are suspended as the empire of one of the most feared men in Josie falls apart.